and put in the form that we have it, which is the most popular form, and therefore we get the idea that the Jews killed John the Baptist. Now, some of the Jews thought that the destruction of Herod's army came from God. That Herod, the Tetrarch's army, which had been destroyed by Aretas, was from God. And this very justly. So the Jews were supporting John the Baptist, according to Josephus, not against him, as a punishment for what he did against John, known as the Baptist. For Herod slew him, though he was a good man, and commanded the Jews to exercise virtue both as righteousness towards each other and piety towards God, and so come to baptism, for that immersion would be acceptable to him if they made use of it, not in order to put away or remit sins, which is the way it's put, baptism for remission of sins is what's put, but he says it's not for remission of sins. Now you're going to have to say, well, something's wrong somewhere. But for the purification of the body only, supposing the soul had already thoroughly been purified beforehand by the practice of righteousness. So you purify your soul beforehand by the practice of body. So what do you do the immersion for? Bodily sins. That's in the Jewish style. You know, you copulated the night before, or you come in contact with something impure. It's a ritual immersion process, almost on a daily basis. And all these groups will practice daily ritual immersion, or what we would call baptism. Now, when many others came in crowds before him, they were greatly moved by hearing the words. Herod feared lest the great influence John, however the people might put it, into his power and inclination to raise a rebellion, for they seemed ready to do anything he wished them to do, thought it best by putting him to death to prevent any mischief he might cause, and not bringing himself into difficulties with the people by sparing a man who he might later repent when it was too late to do so. Accordingly, he sent a prisoner out of Herod's suspicious temper to Machaerus the castle that I just mentioned, and there put him to death. Now the Jews were of the opinion that the destruction of his army was sent as a punishment upon Herod and a mark of God's displeasure to him. Well, and that's from a Roman stoolie, who is actually in the Roman service, who is writing in order, for various reasons. So here, and he usually isn't as forthcoming. So again, first of all, Herod killed John for the reason that and by the way, you say he doesn't mention Salome. No, she's not part of it. Later, he mentioned Salome and said Herodias' daughter was Salome, and she was married to Philip. And Philip died childless, so she went and married some other guy. I can tell you who she married. It's all, and that's the detail. This Antiquities is. Let me see if I can get you the Salome thing here just quickly. I'm sorry to bore you with this, but this is the problem of the unexamined life. Someone said the unexamined life is not worth living. Let me see.
Did she marry Alexander?
No, that's a different one.
Salome.
Yeah, that's an ancestor of hers. That's in 3 generations prior to that. Here, granddaughter of her, and let's see. Salome, Antipater's daughter, Herod. No, there's some. I guess it's this one. 1854. 1854. Okay, 1854. And Herod the Great had 2 daughters, Miriam and Salimso. They all married their cousins, by the way. I'll talk about Herod's brother, et cetera, married this other person. Let's see. Well, here it is. But Aristobulus, the 3rd brother of Agrippa, married Jotapata, the daughter of Sampsigeras, king of Emesa. They had a daughter who was deaf, whose name was Jotapate. And these hitherto were the children of the male line. But Herodias, their sister, was married to Herod, the son of Herod the Great, who was born of Miriam, the daughter of Simon the high priest, who had a daughter, Salome, after whose birth Herodias took upon her to confound the laws of her country and divorce herself from her husband while he was still alive, and married Herod Antipas, her husband's brother, by the father's side, and he was Tetrarch of Galilee. But her daughter Salome was married to Philip, the son of the great Herod. There he sort of gets it all out for you. It's complicated, and this is a poor translation and so on. But This is where studying starts to be interesting. And I'm not trying to criticize, I'm just saying, hey, so now I know it was better when I just described it to you. Anyway, that's all in chapter 5 of book 18 of the Antiquities. It's encyclopedic. There's just a vast number of stuff. Say, well, how did the Gospels get their presentation of it? Oh, I think after a generation or two, and fed by the desire to make things look as bad as possible, because they wanted to, it was Paul's Gentile mission that had survived overseas. They wanted to make the events in Palestine look as, lurid as possible. And then finally also, the writers of the Gospels themselves hadn't understood that the Herodians were not Jews anyway, that they were Greco-Arabs, as I told you, who had been slightly Judaized, and that the people didn't like them, that they'd been put over them by the Romans. So they didn't know this. So they thought that the Herods, whoever they were Jewish kings. So therefore, if Jewish kings killed someone, then the Jews were responsible. So, it's a very unsophisticated, very superficial view of it. So that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not blaming any of these people. I mean, just read the newspaper accounts today if you want to see superficiality. It's just that this is how things get reported after they get second, third, fourth hand through different retailers and so on. And finally, the basic facts of the story are obliterated and something else emerges. But Josephus is here, and you can doubt him, but I think on these things he is pretty firm. So let's go back to the conclusion there. Herod, who was hated by the people, was worried that John was so popular among the people that he would suggest to the people to lead an uprising against him that was going on constantly. So not only was John not antagonistic to the Jewish populace, I don't think he yelled at them, "You generation of vipers, who told you to flee the doom of the common," and so on and so forth, and made it look like he hated the populace. I think that the people were in awe of him, considered him a great leader, an extremely interesting, inspired person, and probably a prophet. Okay? And that Herod, that is Herod Antipas, the son of the great Herod, or Herod who had many wives, who was insecure